The following program is produced by Londonderry residents. The views and opinions expressed are not necessarily the views and opinions of the LACTV staff or its volunteers, and should not be considered an endorsement by CTV20 or its staff and volunteers.
Hello Londonderry, and welcome to another episode of Concord Conversations. I'm co-hosting this morning. I'm Representative Wayne McDonald. I have the proud honor of representing Londonderry in the New Hampshire House, and along with several others. I'm joined by one of those individuals this morning, co-hosting, Representative Doug Thomas. And we're delighted today. Remember, this is a show about local, county, and state issues. And certainly local issues are critically important to all of us here in Londonderry and in every community, but especially Londonderry, because that's where we live. We're delighted to have one of our prominent town government officials, the town clerk, Sherry Farrell, with us. Welcome, Sherry. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor.
And town clerk, as all of us know, is a popularly elected office. Sherry, how long have you been in town clerk?
Since 2014.
Wow.
Wayne,
okay.
yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And you're currently in which term?
This would be the first term was just for 1 year. We're going into my third now. So yeah,
excellent.
It's hard to believe. You know, the time goes by so fast.
And town clerk has many, many responsibilities, and in a large community such as this, those responsibilities are only magnified. And Sherry, why don't you tell us a little bit about as much as you want to about the job. And
how much time do we have? There's so much to share, and it's an honor to serve the people of Londonderry, where I, for the most part, grew up, and then taught at our high school for many years. Was Miss Cummings back then, and I was grateful for every day of doing that. And then one of my students, actually, from that time, Kevin Smith, saw the potential in having someone like me as town clerk and representing the people in the town I love back in 2014. And it's been an honor, and I'm truly grateful every day since. I truly didn't realize, I knew some of the facets of being a town clerk, but the world of a town clerk and her team, because a town clerk can't do it alone, is vast. And when people walk into our office, the town clerk tax collector's office, they might be processing automobiles. That's the one we all think of first, and that brings in so much revenue to our town, millions and millions of dollars every year.
would you say that's only second to the property tax itself?
Absolutely, yes, and it's pretty close to. It's amazing because up at the airport we also have many of the lease companies up there, so we really touch a lot of different areas with our automobiles. Some are phenomenal big companies that we process their trucks and trailers and all of that through. Boats now we can actually process in town too, so that's a big part of what our team does. And then we also have vital records, which are the happy things such as the birth certificates and the marriage certificates, but then also the sad things. When someone has a loved one that's passed, they have to, they come in to see us for that certificate. And we do a lot of hand holding in our office too, because you never know what someone's going to come through that door with. Two big focuses now for us: dog registrations, which in New Hampshire, it's the law to register your dogs, not cats. States like Rhode Island do require their cats to be registered, but in New Hampshire it's the law, and it protects your puppies, but also it protects all of us, making sure that they have their rabies vaccinations, that we can account for them. And right now, the next week or so, we'll be sending out civil forfeiture notices to those people that haven't registered their dogs. In town, our population is about 27,000 now, and we have about 5,500 dogs registered in town. We still have about 560 that haven't been registered, so those are the ones that by law we have to send out a civil forfeiture legal letter to, stating that now they'll be hit with a fine of $25 extra per dog, and also a monthly dollar fee too. And those are things, yes, it brings an extra revenue to the town, but that's not our goal with it. The goal is really to make sure that everyone's safe and accounted for. And Yeah, go ahead, Wayne.
No, I'm
Yeah,
sorry to
no.
interrupt. If a dog has passed away, for example, do they have to show proof of that?
Great question. That's our biggest issue with our dog registrations, because often if a dog is passed sadly or the family has moved, the dog now is with someone else in the family, if they don't notify us, technically they're still going to get that civil forfeiture. So we ask, and you've seen me probably at the council meeting saying, please, let us know if you no longer have your pet, so that you don't get those letters and those notices and those fines.
What kind of verification? Is it just a verbal verification, or do you have
Yeah,
to?
exactly. Great question. Yeah, I didn't answer it. You're right. It can simply call us, send us an email. If you're in the office, let us know. And my team is phenomenal about saying when you're registering a car, hey, do you have any dogs? Oh, I see you have 2 dogs. Do you still have them? And we do our best to pull the information out. But if we work together, it just makes it so much easier. And then the biggest part of being a town clerk that's on many of our minds, of course, our elections, which is a great honor.
We can that'll be a question we'd like to bring up in just a little bit. But one of the services you provide is notary public.
Yes,
And also,
yeah.
I've seen you perform some Justice of the Peace
Yes.
ceremonies in there. Can you talk a little bit about that first?
Absolutely, I'm represented. Yes, that's something. Back when I first started, part of being a town clerk is that you are required by law to do marriage licenses. Your office is required to provide that service. And I'd heard about a few communities, not many do it, that actually it's kind of one-stop shopping. You can come in, do your marriage license, it takes us about 20 minutes, and then if you want, in New Hampshire, you can actually get married immediately after. The marriage license is good for 90 days, but you could choose to just get married right there in my office. And thanks to Benson's, Scott, years ago, they donated the arch that's in my office, and it brings an extra revenue. That extra 5 minutes helps couples out of all ages, helps our service people out an awful lot, and it brings in $75 of extra revenue to our town too for each one.
That presents a question that happened this year in the legislature. I believe we passed a bill, or it's on the governor's table, one or the other.
He's already signed it.
He's already signed it, which says that the minimum age for marriage is now 18, with no exceptions. Just a question, in your tenure, have you seen any marriages that occurred under the age of 18?
I'm so happy that I can say no. No, and I think that our governor has done an exceptional job, in my humble opinion, and I'm glad that bill was signed for us because it protects our children. Used to be 16, and now moving it to 18. And there are exceptions. There are exceptions that that can be provided to that, but overall, yeah, that was.
Are any of the exceptions related to religious customs?
I would believe that some of them are, Doug, but I'd have to verify that. But I do believe that there are exceptions that would have to be addressed. But overall,
When I was investigating welfare fraud for the state, whether the parents were together and
Right.
the absent spouse was being reported in the home along with their income and so forth was a huge part of what I did. I actually had a case where the couple was 14 years old and had a child, which is frightening for everyone concerned. So certainly does need to be some regulation.
It does to protect them. And the number in my mind, I was thinking the age 14. That was. Thank goodness it wasn't common, but it wasn't uncommon back then either.
They certainly took a big advantage of puberty the minute it hit.
Yes, exactly. But no, that was something very favorable. But yes, so it brings an extra revenue. Something we decided a long time ago is that a service person came in, that we wouldn't charge them that $75. It's a small way to thank them for their service and the risk that they take for all of us. But yeah, it's a happy. And again, one-stop shopping. You can do your marriage license. You have 90 days to use it. You can get married in our office, and then we can even do your certified copies. So within 45 minutes or less, they have everything done that they need. For insurance, for different reasons that they have. But yeah, so thank you for thinking
And
of
with
that.
marriage
Doug. That's good.
licenses, you have to get it in the town where you live or the town you're going to get married, right? One or the other?
Now that's what a lot of people think, and I'm glad you brought that up. So in the state of New Hampshire, you can go to any town or city hall and get your marriage license. And some towns require a birth certificate to do that, others don't. It's not required by law, but it can sure make the process easier. You do have to show proof of ID, but you could go anywhere. If you happen to be up in North Conway and you decided, hey, we want to go get our marriage license, you could go into that town hall, and then you have 90 days to use it. If it goes to 91, then you're just going to be required to do another marriage license. But you can be from any state too, and every state has different laws on this.
That was my next question.
Yeah, you could be from any state, any country.
I was just going to any country.
Yeah, any country. You can show us your passport, proof again of ID.
And again, you can go into any community, even if
really
you're from out of state. Wow.
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes. I remember one time I happened to be going to the library for something, and two people that were trucking long distance across the country, and my dad was a truck driver that brought us to Londonderry years ago, and they were looking because they just decided they wanted to do a marriage license and get married, and I just happened to be going over to the library for something, but they were from Arizona, and they came here and they were able to do everything. And again, at any country, which is it fascinates me too when I say it, Doug. Yeah.
Is that a change in the law? Because when I've been a JP since I think 1993. For some reason, I thought originally you either had to get the marriage license from the groom's town, the bride's town, or the town where you were getting married.
Now, I wonder, Wayne, if years ago perhaps, because many people ask that question, not since I've been town clerk, but many people will assume that, that's where you have to
Because I almost think that manual they give you, I think that, I want to say.
Oh, the JP manual.
Yeah, I almost
that's
think it said that in
interesting.
that at the time.
Yeah.
Of course, that was a long time ago.
No, very interesting, yeah.
So Londonderry has a population, as you mentioned, 27,000
Just about.
people. So how much of a staff is required to run the town clerk's office?
We have an amazing team. We have 4 full-time people, and then we have 1 part-time person. We have Debbie, we have Tracy, Carol, Christy, Kayla, our wonderful tax collector, Allison, my deputy, also as a town clerk. And it's a very small group that run our office, and there's just the 4 full-time people, again Debbie as our part-time person, but we get the job done. And people will often come in and wonder how we can accomplish all that, because all of the monies from the town come through our office, which is relatively small when you think of over $100 million that's coming through. And property taxes, of course, are twice a year, so they're coming through online.
That's due next Monday.
It's coming right up, yeah, it is. And people, thank you to all the residents who are understanding, that it is part of what we all need to do, but it's very difficult for some of our residents, but everyone has been so kind and positive about it. And yeah, so all of that happens through those doors. If there's a police violation that needs to be paid, it comes through our office, all of those different things. But we get it done, and for my team, all the wonderful people that I just mentioned, they have to wear so many hats, and that's part of being town clerk. It's not for someone, in my opinion, that if you have to just be focused on one thing, you've got to love numbers, you've got to really love people and helping and taking care. You have to know computers and programs, and and be able to switch and move, and then tossing in if someone comes in with a sad heart. That again, someone passed, so you want to work and help them through that as you're doing these other difficult things. So, and then the one I didn't mention, record keeping. That's kind of how town clerk started back. We're kind of known as one of the very oldest servant type of political professions back, way back into, hundreds of years ago. And we were known and started as record keepers in the town. And also we had to manage the meetings and the population to keep the history of everything. And it's still a big part of what we do, but wearing many hats, multitasking, it's our team in that office, not for the weak of heart. It's a wonderful profession to be a part of.
Well, this probably brings us to the elephant in the room. This time of year is always an interesting
donkey,
conversation.
because we have a bipartisan audience.
Yeah. Oh, and just on that note too, I take great pride in being nonpartisan, and all clerks are nonpartisan.
Well, that's a figure of speech, not related to any political thing. When the big thing in the room,
I know.
the big thing in the room is the upcoming elections.
Yes.
But what part? People have sometimes a misconception. over what certain positions in
gets
town
fired.
deal in certain parts of the election. What does a town clerk deal in?
Right. So in our office, Doug, we are doing everything to get ready for that election day. So we're registering voters that come in, and we have a lot of new residents coming in now with our Baldwins and people coming in from all other states because to me, Londonderry and New Hampshire, I don't know why you'd want to live anywhere else other than New Hampshire, but they come in to register to vote, and we take care of that with them. Right now, absentee ballots are starting to come through for us, and it's our role, our requirement to make sure that we record, keep track of all of those absentee ballots, and then when the ballots come in, we have to make sure in an extremely timely fashion that they are mailed out to people in Florida, all over. We have what we call UACAVA voters that could be in any country, and we have to process all of that. So that the clerk's role and her team is to get ready and to assist our moderator. And the moderator really, we are blessed to have an incredible one in Londonderry, Jonathan Kipp, been with us many years, and he's detail-oriented, knows the laws, and yet he can present it in a fair, transparent way to everyone. Tough role to be a moderator. And so our job is to get everything ready. We set up the voting place. We make sure that we've dotted all the I's. We establish the testing and counting of the ballots, testing of the machines. And then we all need to be ready for literally showtime on election day. And many people aren't aware, but for your town clerks across the state, 234 town clerks, and your moderators, they don't just show up when the polls open. In Londonderry at 6 o'clock, I know Mr. Kipp is there at 4:30 on election day. I'm over at my office at 4:45 because I have to, with a police escort, bring the ballots out of our secured vault to our election polling place, which is the gym. And then we're really lucky if we are able to leave on these bigger elections by 3 in the morning. So it's really a 24-hour plus turnaround. And again, you have to be able to manage that and stay sharp for that entire time. But it's an election team. It's not the town clerk, it's not the moderator. It's a team. Our supervisors of the checklist, which we have 3 supervisors of the checklist. Our Kristen Grages has been the supervisor for many years. She's exceptional. She's sharp. We're so fortunate to have her because these people, yes, they get paid a small hourly amount. They're volunteers. They're not doing it for fame and fortune. They're doing it for the love of democracy and for keeping our elections transparent, fair, and they, sometimes they are judged unfairly, in my opinion, and because which is a concern too, because we have to have good people that come out to take on these roles. So yeah, it's really an election team, though.
Are the sample ballots available yet?
Not yet, no. They probably at some point in July. We just had our candidate sign-ups, which ended 2 Fridays ago, and now the state, again, that's a partnership there with our Secretary of State's office, our Attorney General. Everyone has to work with elections to make sure that that everything is fair and transparent. But they're working hard. I've talked to our Secretary of State and Kaylee, his assistant, and they're in the process of, we have to sign everyone up. It's part of our role. At the end of each day, we have to send the forms to the state. But remember, sometimes I think, but it's Londonderry, but there are 234 towns and cities that they're doing the same thing for. So I don't think the ballot will be ready for a few weeks,
That's
I would
fine.
guess.
I was just curious.
Yeah, good question.
So, obviously we want to keep the public informed, and sample ballot is a good way to do that. And it's a
It is.
valuable tool. You've talked about, the fact that you have to have a police escort and the ballots are kept in a vault. And, voter integrity, ballot security, the accuracy of counting, all of that is critically important, and it's a concern for everyone, and it should be.
Yep.
How big a concern, or whether there's a belief anywhere that there's fraud or voter suppression, is a continuing debate between the 2 major parties and among various candidates. But I'm glad you mentioned the vault, the police, and the fact that you start at 4:45 in the morning the day of the election and finish at 3 a.m. the day after the election, there's been a lot of discussion about the efficiency, the accuracy of voting machines, and whether there should be all hand counts. And I can't imagine what a total hand count election, even in Londonderry. We have 16,000 registered voters.
16,000, and for our presidential, most of them will come out to
Right.
vote.
And I mean, when would that day end? Because the votes have to be tabulated before the moderator and the staff leave under our Constitution.
I appreciate that you asked that question, because I said 3 is kind of the norm, even with our town elections. The 2020 presidential election, we were in the gym, everything was cleared out, and it was like 6 in the morning, and we were 5:30 actually. We
So it was
left
a
that
24-hour
morning.
day for you.
Plus, yeah. And that's not uncommon. That happens across the state, and there's quite an incredible network of town clerks with our leader, the Secretary of State's office, and we're calling and working together throughout the night. Moderators, the same thing. And that's why we also have assistant moderators.
People
too,
would be
they're
so
very-
tired, I can't imagine, blurry-eyed people
Oh.
counting ballots, and how that could be considered more accurate than the machines.
Yeah. Wayne, when people ask me about that, and in smaller communities, if you have 500, some of our smaller towns, Unity, places, maybe it's a little different because you have a smaller population, but you're right. When you have 16,000 voters and ballots, machines, in my humble opinion, I've watched them, I've witnessed them. We do testing before. We have teams ready to go if there are any
And
obstacles.
they've just upgraded them all, right?
We did, yes. The state has been very progressive on that. And I often think of it when people say we should hand count. I wonder, would we really go back to washing our clothes by hand? Because that's progress. That's that's learning
And it's
growing.
efficiency, because
And it's
human error is a
efficiency.
real concern.
It's a real concern. Absolutely.
To be clear, though, the machines we're talking about are basically optical readers.
Yes, yes.
And so I believe it's a state law, if not in the Constitution, I'm not sure, that we must have paper ballots, which is a good
Available.
thing.
Every vote has to have a
Yes,
document.
yes,
But
yeah.
all across the state, we have paper
We
ballots.
do. I'm very proud
They're
of that.
counted by machines
Yes.
in some cases, but
Yeah.
in no place do we have electronic ballot voting machines.
No, and
which
some
is good
states
because
do, yes,
Some states do,
yeah.
which I personally don't like.
No, I'm with you.
Because there's no traceability, really.
Those are more subject to being hacked.
Right.
Right, so
Yeah.
it's required of paper ballots. So if there's ever any question, you can do a paper ballot recount.
Exactly.
And actually, it's not a constitutional issue, because, cities like Manchester and Nashua used to have the voting machines, and having been in politics a long time, I was involved in some recounts, and the only way you could do a recount in the city is to rerun the tape of the voting machine. There was no ballot. So a statute was passed that, now it's basically the, I guess you call it OPTEC, or whatever you call the system that we use now. The law changed. It was former Secretary Bill Gardner, the former Secretary of State,
Yes.
was a big proponent of that every single precinct has to have a paper ballot and a document of how someone voted, so that you can do an effective recount and an accurate recount.
Absolutely. And it
So-
was Secretary Gardner that held on to that for us, first in the nation primary, and
Yes.
the paper and pen. It's very, very hard to do anything illegal or wrong or shameful when you have paper, and as you said, we can go back, we can recount, and we've done that many different times.
Now, what role does the town clerk and the office play into maintaining the voters' checklist, registration list?
Well, thank goodness we have that phenomenal team. So our supervisors of the checklist are the ones that maintain that. There are 3, along with, Kristen is our supervisor, our chair, and then she has 2 people helping her and assisting with that. And they're the ones that really check and go through that process. They're trained. Something else we didn't mention, in all of these roles, like the hours of training that I've gone through for our state on different things, elections, automobiles, vital records. And that's what, when someone comes into our offices to work, they're required to go through training. And that's why we have things like regional trainings. And it was noted that I closed my office a short time ago so that my team could go for training together, just like our teachers do. It's vital so that we can be accurate and transparent and understand the laws change. And I have to thank both of you. Right.
Continuing education is so important in every
It is,
every
it
field.
really is. And and that's why sometimes so that you can build that team and ask questions and learn the material together. And one day a year, it's priceless to the community, so that we can make sure that we serve our residents that we love. I think of us as the heart of the community. But also, I have to thank our like both of you and people at the state level who are taking on the role of listening and supporting too. And that's such a vital role.
One of the things I've learned is following the RSAs, the laws, are very important. And I'm aware that there are instances where some towns, sometimes they're a little loose, and if you're not following to the letter, you open yourself up to potential criticism.
Yes.
Londonderry isn't like that. We follow the law to the letter as best as I can recall it.
Absolutely.
Anyway,
Thank you.
to a point where sometimes you question, well, why this? But the thing is that if you follow the RSA exactly
Right.
in accordance with the way it's written, there's very little room for any type of error.
Yeah,
And in the towns that don't, as you know in the past, they run into some issues.
absolutely.
And so can you comment on that? Just how, is it that hard to follow the RSA exactly? Is it an irritant to people, or is it something that you just have to know the law and just do it?
You just said it. You have to know the law and you have to follow the law, and the laws are there in every walk of what we do to protect us, in this case to protect democracy and our election process. And I believe, and I think after 10 years of experience with this, that in New Hampshire we do it best, because I know, Wayne, you were on the elections committee, which we could talk, we could have a conversation about things going on. Doug, you're popping in, what's going on with this? How can I help? And in New Hampshire, we do it the best, and I would match us against anyone. Our elections are fair, and they're transparent, and people can ask good questions. But I do ask that people ask good questions and gather the information, or accurate in what they're bringing forth, because some of the scrutiny that the different election officials and throughout the state go through, it's sad to see at times, and just people gathering good, solid facts and information. That's what makes all of this work. But what RSAs, one of the toughest ones we just had recently is early June, last day to change your parties. And I'm sure you've probably heard a lot of that up at the state. And if you wanted to change from an undeclared voter or a Republican or a Democrat, the last day was early June. And after that point, no matter how much we want to help, no matter how much we would like to make everyone have that opportunity to change their party, we cannot do it because, Doug, it's an RSA,
Right.
and we have to follow that law. And it's been established that that is the right way, and that in New Hampshire, that's how the election process works. But you can bet on election day in September, there will be a few people that'll come up and say, no, I know that I am registered as this type of voter, and I don't want that other ballot. But unfortunately, it's the law, so it's not our choice, it's RSAs, and they protect us
But
too.
that doesn't apply to the primary ballot, because anybody can draw whichever.
An undeclared can.
Only an
undeclared can draw
undeclared.
what any party they want.
Undeclared can go in, and I've always been undeclared, and I can pick, I decide on the person, and I can pick based on that. But if you are a Democratic person or a Republican, and you've decided at the last minute, now I want to switch, you cannot do that. Now, on the general election, we all get the same ballot, and and I can, you can mix, you can do whatever you'd like to do at that point. But the primary is a tough one, and our Secretary of State, our towns, we do our best to get the word out there that social media has helped with that. But with all things, sometimes people don't hear. Some people, sometimes things are missed. You can't quite get to everyone, even though we try as hard as we can to get every bit of information out to everyone.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, the elections are important. They're fascinating. They have enormous consequences as far as at every level, again, local, county, state, and federal. Unfortunately, we're pretty much out of time, so any final words, Sherry, that you want to share with us?
Yeah, I had my little list. I thank again both of you for representing us, and to all of the 234 clerks out there, and our state partners, because the only way is that we work together and look for the good in each other, in the process, democracy, and our great state. And yeah, and if anyone has any questions, please call, ask. My cell phone's out there, 603-512-5596. And if something's bothering you, give me a call, because again, it's an honor to serve, and it's an honor to be on your show. Thanks for thinking of
Thank you.
Thank you
us
for coming.
clerks. Yeah,
State
thank you.
Representative Doug Thomas, any final thoughts or comments? Or?
I think Londonderry is very fortunate to have a full-service town clerk office. I know I grew up in a small town in the middle part of New Hampshire, which the town clerk office might be open 1 or 2 days a week, and then only certain times of the day.
Truly, yeah.
So I think we're very fortunate. Of course, we need that here.
We do.
But we're very fortunate to have a full-service, full-time town clerk's office, and I thank you for being in charge of it. I believe you're also a member of, or maybe at one time the chairman of the State Association of Town Clerks.
Thank you for bringing that up too. Yes, we have an executive board. We work with the governor, Secretary of State, Attorney General's office, all of the state partners, and I've served on that now for many years. I was the president a couple years ago, and now I'm the public relations person too. So,
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Very much engaged. Well, again, one thing I think, well, I know all of us here, on the show today, I believe, and I think all of us in the community can agree, is Londonderry is a very special place, and the three of us are very honored to represent Londonderry in various ways, and we thank you for that opportunity, and we thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
The preceding program was produced by Londonderry residents. The views and opinions expressed are not necessarily the views and opinions of the LACTV staff or its volunteers, and should not be considered an endorsement by CTV 20 or its staff and volunteers.